So, connect, innovate, diversify.
Illegal dumping and littering is a concern across the Gladstone region, with over 134 offences in the last 18 months. Our region is beautiful, but there are a few bad apples that ruin it for the rest of us, and they need to clean up their act.
Commonly found items at illegal dumping sites across the region include car bodies and batteries, mattresses, tyres, white goods and furniture, and green waste. These items can be disposed of at any of the region's waste transfer stations, some of them even for free.
Illegal dumping and littering pollutes our environment, harms plants and animals, and detracts from the enjoyment of our public spaces. It can lead to stormwater and ocean pollution, with large amounts of plastic, sugar sachets, and cigarette butts caught in stormwater traps and grates.
It's cheaper for everyone to dispose of waste correctly. Illegal dumping and littering costs our ratepayers thousands of dollars each year in waste management and clean-up. It's also costly for our dumper, with penalties of up to $10,000.
We can all work together to keep our region beautiful and dispose of waste responsibly by placing rubbish in the bins, or even holding onto the rubbish until you're near a suitable bin, and using our local waste facilities. Don't be part of the problem of pollution. We want you to be a part of the solution.
From towns to the bush, illegal dumping and littering is everybody's responsibility. Protect our public spaces and natural environment by doing the right thing for today and tomorrow.
If you see illegal dumping,
Dob in a dumper.
See it,
report it, stop it.
good morning and welcome to the general meeting of Tuesday the 3rd of May. We'll open the meeting and move to apologies. We do note that Mayor Matt Burnett has an approved leave of absence and is an apology for today. Can we go to messages of condolence? Are there any messages of condolence, councillors? No? We'll move on to prior notification of conflicts of interest. I understand Councillor Churchill has one.
Yeah, thanks for that, Councillor Goodluck. I declare that I may have a conflict of interest in Council's general meeting in agenda item G 4.5 under the requirements of the Local Government Act, which relates to the Regional Arts Development Fund Round 1 2021-2022, with two applications in that particular agenda item. First one is the Miriamvale State School 125-year celebration, school and community musical production of school song, contemporary collections and historic stories. As the coordinator of this important and vital history recording project is my immediate cousin, Mrs. Philippa Ralph. Further, in another one of the applications or the submissions is Calliope River Village Festival, New Arts, Crafts and Music Festival within Cultural Tourism. As the coordinator, Mr. Jack Bill Johns is a musical associate and a member of mine in a band titled Sand, who may somehow be invited to be involved in the festival. But I just put it on record that I seek no remuneration from my involvement in the music industry. However, in light of saying that, as the chair of the Gladstone Regional Arts Development Fund Committee, I draw your attention to the RADF minutes which are on the agenda, whereby I have already declared these potential conflicts of interest, and for the purposes of transparency, continuity and my own integrity, I respectfully request that these two project submissions be separated and dealt with separately from the others listed in the agenda, if that can be permitted. That will allow me to be part of any discussion and or debate on the remaining project assessments. But I advise to my colleagues that I will leave the chambers during these two submissions that I have declared a conflict of interest. So I welcome any questions on that conflict of interest, if that be the case, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Churchill. No questions? Did you have a question, Councillor Hanson, or a conflict?
No, I haven't got either, Councillor, but I just want to remind everybody that I am Council's representative on GAPDL committee, and they have a request in item 4.3, but I'll stay in the room.
So under the Local Government Act, you don't have a conflict as a council-appointed member of that organisation. Any other conflicts, councillors? Councillor Muscat?
Thank you, Councillor Goodluck. Councillor Natalia Muscat informed the meeting that I have a declarable conflict of interest in agenda item G 4.5, Regional Arts Development Fund Round 1. The conflict is as a result of myself providing a letter of support to one of the applicants, as well as previously having provided a letter of support to one of the applicants that are presenting the outcome reports. So as a result, I would like to leave the room while the whole item is discussed. I don't need the items to be separated. I'm happy to leave the room. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Muscat. No other conflicts, councillors? No, I do have two conflicts. I, Councillor Khan Goodluck, advise that in agenda item G/4.3, Community Investment Program Impact Events, I have a prescribed conflict of interest in accordance with Section 150 EI of the Queensland Local Government Act 2009, as I am the President of the Boyne Tanam Arts Business and Community Association Incorporated, or BTABC, for which has been recommended to receive funding from Council in accordance with the Community Investment Program As a result of my conflict of interest, I will leave the meeting for this item, but I would like to separate that particular item at that time. I also would like to declare a declarable conflict of interest in item number G/4.5, Regional Arts Development Fund, Round 1, 2021 to 2022, in the Calliope River Village Festival, as I provided a letter of support for that event in a personal capacity as a local musician, and it's recommended for funding under the RADF, and I will leave the room for that item. No other conflicts, councillors? All good. We'll move on to the mayoral statement of current issues, and as the mayor is currently on leave, as the acting mayor, I'll give a quick brief of events that have happened. But obviously we had the hookup over the weekend, 3 days of fantastic fishing adventures. We had many people. It was one of the biggest crowds that I've seen at the hookup. Interestingly, I know from last year we had over 1,200 participants that entered the event from across the state of Queensland. There was about 60 participants from outside the state, and I know that I'd like to congratulate the Hookup Committee and all of the volunteers, sponsors and various different community organisations that came together to make that event possible. It was a really fantastic event once again for the region. I know last year's event saw 100% of the accommodation booked out for the entire Boyne-Tanham area, and it input about $2 million into the local economy as a result of that event. So I know the Hookup Committee will have some more up-to-date figures over the coming weeks, but fantastic to see another successful hookup event. We also had the Gladstone Engineering Alliance Supply Chain Expo on the 28th of April, and it was a wonderful event up at the Gladstone Entertainment Convention Centre. And I'd like to congratulate the GEA team and also our council team at the GECC for bringing that together. It was a great display of local innovation and capability from our local businesses, and particularly our local manufacturers, and making lots of important connections. We also heard from many different proponents which are looking at new and future industries, and it just goes to show that Gladstone is the place to be when we're talking about industries of the future and the jobs of the future. Yesterday we had Labor Day, and there was many hundreds of people that gathered down at the Gladstone Marina. Labor Day is a day where we come together to acknowledge the achievements of workers and their unions over many generations. And it was a great day for all. There was jumping castles and lollies for the kids, and lots of fun to be had down there. So be sure to get along and participate in that event in future years. May is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and tomorrow we do have Domestic and Family Violence Remembrance Day. It's Wednesday the 4th of May. It'll be held down at Friend Park at Barney Point, and everyone is invited to come along and show your support for a violence-free community. We also have Our Priceless Past, and the red carpet premiere event for the 2021 Our Priceless Past short film series will be taking place tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. at the Gladstone Entertainment and Convention Centre. So everyone's invited to come along. It is a fantastic collaboration of short stories put together from Year 8 students from the Tallua State High School, and telling stories of many of the seniors in our community that have helped shape and forge the community that we live in today. Lots of local filmmakers, including Katrina Elliott, Wesley Cruz, Photopia Studio, as well as First Nations filmmaker Kayleen Butler, have created the first Our Priceless Past series of short films. So that will be a very special event. Certainly invite everyone along to come and participate in that. And obviously we have Mother's Day on the 8th of May, so happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. I hope everyone gets spoilt, lots of breakfast in bed happening on that on Sunday. We'll move on now to the confirmation of the minutes. Can I get someone to move? Move Councillor Branthwaite, seconding Councillor Churchill. All those in favour? That's carried. And now we have a deputation, and I'd like to invite the Gladstone region engaging in action together. Lorna McGuinness, Orla Smith and Bernadette Ariens, and welcome you to the chamber, and I'll hand it over to you, Lorna. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Councillor. Good luck. And thank you, everybody, for allowing us this time this morning to give you an update on Gladstone Region engaging in action together. A bit of a mouthful, so we might stick with GRT for the rest of the presentation. Here this morning to give you an update because the last time we saw you was about 6 months ago. So we're keen to tell you everything that we've been doing, but a bit hard to sneak that into 15 minutes. So what we have done is there's a lot more information in the materials here in front of you than we'll be able to present in the 15 minutes. But please, if there's any questions that you have about any of the content that you'd like to ask at the end, please do. Thank you. Just like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners on the land on which we meet, our Bailey, Gureng and Turrbal Bunda people, and to pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and to extend that respect as well to other First Nations people in our beautiful Gladstone region. Thank you. So Gladstone Region Engaging in Action Together is funded under the Stronger Places, Stronger People initiative. So for Gladstone, our program here under GRT is supported by both the Commonwealth Government and also by Queensland Government. And pleased to say that we're also working very collaboratively with Gladstone Regional Council to bring 3 levels of government into the work, which is a community-led and place-based project for Gladstone. The work under Stronger Places, Stronger People is a long-term social change endeavour to disrupt the cycle of disadvantage. And I feel a little bit guilty every time I say that because it sounds so simple when you say it, but obviously it involves a lot of very complex issues. And that's why the fact that this initiative is a place-based initiative allows us to make sure that our local context and our lived experience from our community members is factored into the work that we do to improve community wellbeing. Our other partners in the work are CQ University, who have become the auspice of GRT on behalf of the Gladstone community. Here for Gladstone, under the Rio Tinto Community Investment Funding Program, who support the Gladstone Region Wellbeing Data Hub, which you'll hopefully get to see in the next couple of months. And then all of our service networks as well. So you'll see as we go through the presentation that there are a large number of service networks that support this work and work alongside those that are in paid and volunteer positions under the GRT program to support bringing that community voice into the improvement of community wellbeing. So the structure of the work, we have a volunteer leadership group who help to make sure that the integrity in the work is there and that we meet all of our compliance requirements. We also have a number of volunteer working groups that support the work. There's also a paid backbone team, and since the last time I saw you, we've now got that team fully on board. So we have a team of 5 core staff with an additional 2 staff who are supporting specific areas of work, and 2 other contractors that are supporting work in the community as well. The key thing though is that the work and all the decisions that are made are led through community. So community voice comes into the work, and we'll run you through the process that we use to make sure that that integrity is held. But community voice and community experience assists us to understand where the key priority issues are, to be able to understand and unpack those issues so that they can be dealt with piece by piece, and then to be able to design the solutions and the measurement process to be able to track to see how we're performing and see if we're improving in those wellbeing areas. So just to give you an idea of the process behind that, the tangible steps, if you like. So when we have an ongoing community engagement program, and when we go out and talk to community, we make sure that we're meeting community where they are, asking them where they'd like to and how they'd like to engage, and then seeking their stories and their lived experience of what life in Gladstone is like for them, and some of the great things and some of the challenges that occur for them, particularly focusing on families and children. We bring that information back into the office, and then we hold a issues register, GRT issues register, which basically makes sure that every time a conversation is raised with us, we're making sure that it is an issue that's been captured and that nothing gets missed. We try to always ensure that community also have feedback so that they can hear and understand exactly how their voice is being interpreted, making sure that we've understood what is being said to us, and then allowing them to actually see the process of how that's being included into the work, right down to the action plan and the initiatives that are delivered. So last time we were here, we explained how that process had led us to identify the areas of focus for the next few years under the government funding that's been provided for Gladstone. The theory of change identifies some of those focus areas, and it also identifies some of the, if you like, the success factors that we see in other communities that are starting to really make headway in improving community wellbeing and engaging and collaborating all stakeholders in that work. So our main aim or aspiration is opportunity, equity and quality of life for everyone in our community. And if we think about what that looks like in years to come, what we're really talking about is families having access, equal access to life's basics, feeling independent and having purpose, children feeling safe, happy and loved at home, growing up at home with their families, and children starting school ready to learn and on track to thrive. So these are the focus areas that our community have asked us to take on board and to incorporate into the work over the next few years. Our focus areas at the moment, if we break down those pieces a little bit, are housing, employment, particularly families' access to those two things, and opportunities, ensuring that individuals have self-identity, self-purpose, culture, access to culture and connection to community, and that parents have access to supports, including supports for parenting confidence and healthy lifestyles, and that children have a healthy start to life, including access to quality early educational supports. And to do this, the things that our community helped us identify and that the research has said are those success factors in other communities, the key things that we have to ensure that we allow to establish and enable now are open, transparent information sharing, core evaluation and measurement so we can track and monitor progress, community voice being really central to the work, adaptability, particularly in Gladstone, knowing what we've seen in previous years and the trends that we have with a changing socio-economic environment, making sure that we're factoring in those changes to the work as well, and understanding how they might impact our effectiveness in measurement. Community trust and participation, acting together now for the future, and courage. So courage in terms of challenging the status quo and being brave enough to do things differently. So this work is based off a foundation of some amazing work and efforts that have happened in our community over decades to make sure that our community have access to all the things they need to be strong and have great well-being. Unfortunately, though, what we've seen is that we still don't seem to be able to make the headway that we really want to. So despite all those great efforts, it's time now to start going, okay, what are the things that we can do differently? And the community are already starting to identify where they think some of those improvement areas are. So under the collective impact model that GRT works under, which is the model that Stronger Places, Stronger People provides, there's 5 key elements of the work. One is making sure that there is a paid backbone team to help support and enable community to drive the work. Another is that community voice, making sure it's really central to everything that's being done. The other 3 are shared vision. So we spoke about the aspiration of the work, a shared action plan, and that's our next phase of work that we're just entering into now, is to capture the initiatives that have been identified and include those in an action plan, and then measurement. So you'll see here a wellbeing wheel, often as it's referred to, a wellbeing wheel, which captures the elements of wellbeing for a child, family and community. And within that wellbeing wheel are elements that we have identified over decades, again, globally, to be wellbeing elements, indicators of life, that if we're enabled, then we provide the best opportunities for our families and our children. There's 4 indicators there that have been identified, focused on those focus areas I mentioned in the theory of change. And these 4 indicators form part of our agreement under our government contracts that we will monitor over the next few years, and they feed into a wider national database of wellbeing measurement across Australia. So there's 10 demonstration communities under the Stronger Places, Stronger People initiative, and that measurement piece will cover these 4 indicators plus a number of other indicators that we'll also measure. In addition to those 4 indicators, we're looking at correlating data and indicators to support not only the measurement of wellbeing, but also what are the triggers and the things that may impact on wellbeing. And community members and our sector stakeholders are well versed in this and are helping us to identify what those measures are. So in the Gladstone Region Wellbeing Data Hub, you'll see a number of those measures come to play together, where you'll see the correlating measurements together in one piece. So in terms of community voice, as I say, and often when we talk about GRT, we're really talking about community voice. It's not the paid workers, employees. It's not the individual funding stakeholders, and it's not the volunteer working groups or leadership groups that are making the direction of the work, or forming the direction of the work. They're being led by community voice and helping to collate that and then check that and validate with community to make sure that we're on the right track. So our engagement program is an ongoing program. Orla, who's here, is our community engagement coordinator, and Orla's being supported at the moment by Jared Beasley, and the two of them are out talking to community across our region on a regular basis. There's a few that are mentioned, and just in the last week or so we've been at Gladstone Valley Shopping Centre and Miriamville. That rolling program of engagement, again, meets community where they're at and really starts to try and make a safe space for community to tell their stories. We do make sure that we are also engaging with other sector and non-sector stakeholders that may also be doing community engagement or consultation, so that we can reduce consultation fatigue for the community and try and provide some clarity for community as to who they're talking to at any one point in time. It's also then to make sure that we're managing the expectations of community about the work that we're doing, and to ensure that we've got a shared script so they're not hearing different things from different people. Recognising that First Nations voice has been identified as not always having equity in all of the consultations that occur at various levels of government and community work, we sought feedback very early on from our traditional owner elders and First Nations community members to find out the best way to design and support our community engagement work and the involvement of First Nations community members throughout the work that we do. And some of those key areas that, as a result of that, are the First Nations Working Group. So that First Nations Working Group has 7 community members who bring really rich experience and local knowledge. There are 2 identified positions on our leadership group. So of 9 community member positions, there's 2 First Nations identified positions, and there's currently 3 positions held by First Nations community representatives on that committee. And then we have a dedicated identified position for our community engagement officer as well that supports that engagement on an ongoing basis. And as I mentioned, all of that work now is starting to feed into the Gladstone Region Wellbeing Action Plan. And that plan is a community-owned action plan. So it maps where we want to be and how we're going to get there. So the initiatives that are starting to form out of the conversations and the workshops and the working groups that we have are starting to feed the action plan. And then the next step will be to validate that again with all of our stakeholders to check that the initiatives and the measurement and the design of initiatives is in keeping with what they would expect to create results for us in the community. The other thing we've done with the action plan is to make sure that we're staying very close to the work that's happening through CQ Rural Health around the Gladstone Health Plan to make sure that those 2 pieces fit nicely together and complement each other. It's always a key aim to make sure that we are building on the success of other work and that we're not duplicating, and wherever possible optimising the outcomes by multiple initiatives. The networks that we're working with include networks of council and networks that are run under other government-funded programs such as the Local Level Alliance for Child Supports and Child Safety, Communities for Children, which is funded by DSS, which is the same department that we're funded by under Australian government. And you'll see there's a number of other networks that we work with. And again, to make sure that we're aligning and optimising the work and ensuring that all of our stakeholders, if they're connected to an existing network, we're not adding more workload, but we're streamlining the involvement that they can have with us. So just in terms of some of the identified needs that have come up for us from that community engagement and work with sector, and recognising that in that process that we showed you earlier, one of the key elements of the work that we do is to take the community feedback, compare it with statistical data as well, and then try and understand, unpack, define, quantify and validate what we're hearing. So really trying to get to the nitty-gritty detail of what an issue looks like and how community are experiencing that so that we can actually design solutions to be as effective as we can. Some of the key areas that have come up are that actually, yes, there are some gaps potentially in the service system. There's certainly some areas that there is a eligibility improvement opportunity in to be able to ensure that we're providing early intervention supports for our families and children before the point that they get assessed as being acute or at a intensive need space. So there's definitely some areas of work there, but one of the things we heard over and over again was that actually we've got some really great stuff happening, but there's so much that we just can't keep track of everything, and being able to navigate our way through the system is quite tricky. So some of the areas that were identified to work further on were sector collaboration as it relates to shared information, accessible information, and collaborative case management for customers. So in this case, for our community members, if we've got a community member with complex issues, it's about trying to have a joined up support system for that client so that they also can navigate, particularly if they're in a stressful situation, they can navigate the supports that are available for them and get the best support at the right time before their situation escalates. In that work, there's a couple of key projects that have fallen out of that work. So we've had a workshop, initial workshop, which we had 60 responses from sector in response to, and we had about 35 participants at that time attend that workshop, with others contributing outside of the workshop. And the two areas that they identified predominantly were a joined-up case management system for complex cases and a more intense case management approach to early interventions. Housing is another key area that's been identified. No surprise, we know this is an issue across Australia-wide, not just in Gladstone. And we're working in partnership with the State Department for Housing, and also with their funded service providers to, again, look at what is the supports that can be provided to families straight away with the resources that we have, and then to start delving into the data to look at, okay, what are the next steps? What are the things that as a community we think are the next solutions that we need to be focused on? Skills attraction and retention was a common denominator across all sectors, not just our health and human service sector and feedback from our not-for-profits who are providing service delivery, but also from our commercial sector as well. So we've joined up with the Economic Development Practitioners Network and with the Senior Officers Network to look at skills attraction and retention across all sectors of our community. So the reason this is so relevant to the work that we're doing under GRT and to community wellbeing is that while we've got these great supports, we sometimes talk about them not having the capacity to deliver. We hear about wait lists. We hear about clients disengaging before they get to see the support that they need. And in that case, it's not always that we don't have the right funding in place to deliver the service, but that we just can't attract the quality, skills and experience that we need for those roles. So recognising again that it's a problem that's wider than Gladstone, but really in terms of looking after our community, looking at what are the steps that we can take as a whole community to address that issue, including some early pieces of work, and council is involved in this piece of work around how can we profile Gladstone, heighten the profile of Gladstone as a place of livability, and then also how can we start looking at things internally within organisations about what that skills, homegrown skills look like, what the training programs are, and looking towards a workforce planning process for both sector, human service and health sector, but also in our commercial environment as well. So that's just a capture of, just give you a bit of an idea of the workshops that we have in terms, this was our referral pathways workshop, the first one that we held. That's now evolved into 2 working groups, and we're a large number of stakeholders who are staying informed in the work and providing contributions externally. Those 3 areas that I spoke about, housing, skills attraction, retention, referral pathway for sector, are projects that council is participating in heavily. So we work closely with your community engagement and community development team, and in forming a partnership now with council, we are looking at other ways that we can collaboratively support each other's work, including provision of data. So through the Gladstone Region Wellbeing Data Hub, we're looking at what data council might require for the work that it's doing, and also what data council might hold that we can use within that platform, that data platform. The other ways that we contribute together is peer support, shared training opportunities, looking at the community engagement activities that we do, and particularly around community capacity building. We're developing some individual programs there to support that work. So the Gladstone Region Wellbeing Data Hub, the idea of the Data Hub is to maintain data sovereignty for community. So providing an enabling community to access data that effectively belongs to them because it's about them. So that includes looking at government-held data, and it also includes looking at data that is available at a local level. So the Data Hub is designed to bring together what we can already access publicly in the government systems, but also to bring together data that isn't necessarily publicly available at government level, and also to provide data that is available through our local service providers, including, for example, some of their service presentations, so we can start to map that demand and the supports for the demand. Within the Data Hub, as I mentioned, there is the opportunity to compare different correlating data pieces. So we can start to see, for example, historically, where triggers have occurred that have then created other impacts. And we can use those learnings to then look at those triggers going into the future to identify where our next area of real focus needs to be, to try and be ahead of the curve, which is not easy in a rapidly changing socio-economic environment, but it's our best bet at this point in time. And as I say, collecting data sources from different areas. So this is an example of how the government partnership is so valuable in this place-based work. Our government partners have responded very efficiently to providing data when we've asked for data that isn't publicly available, so that we can better identify where in our community supports are needed. And they're now working with us, including giving us access to some of their data analysts in-house, to be able to identify how we manage some of our variables, like that migration variable that we see, that then impacts on our consistent measurement of whether we're improving our well-being as a result of the services that we're providing. So those data analysts will help us to capture that work and be able to provide more accurate measurement going into the future. Government partners are also working with us to form an agreement where we can access data that they currently collect from funded services, so that we can actually see, without having to add more burden to those service providers in reporting, we can actually use that data to be able to understand the demands and the fluctuation in demands. We can partner that with by addressing gaps in the data. So let's say, for example, there's something that we really need to understand from community to be able to contextualise the data that we're seeing. We can tell our community engagement support, so we can tell our questions to community and seek the stories that will give us that information. We can also do things like go out and survey community on specific topics, so that we can actually build that dimensional picture of what's happening in our community. So just this last couple of slides for you, we wanted to give you some transparency of some of the challenges of the work, but also some of the great strengths that we're seeing and that we're really appreciating, that is enabling our community to be ready to take this work on. In terms of challenges, one of the things I've mentioned is that shift from reactive to proactive. We have a lot of great proactive programs in our community, but what we'd like to understand more of is how much investment are we putting into the reactive and how much investment we're putting into the proactive. So we can start to see how we can bring that curve back, so that community members that might not be eligible for support services until they hit a really acute stage, we can actually start to service earlier. There's challenges within that as well, because not all of us as human beings are happy to access supports earlier. Often it's when it comes to a crunch time that we access supports. So trying to also build our community mindset around that, to make sure that community members are supported and acknowledged in their needs, and that we're all human and that sometimes we will need those supports, is part of the work as well, to try and make sure that community members not only have the supports available and the opportunities, but feel comfortable and confident to access those supports. As I mentioned, some of the issues are very complex. So some of those global social issues that we see around mental health, alcohol and other drugs, domestic family violence, relationship breakdown, they're not overnight fixes. This is long-term work that we're doing. So we'd like to see that some of the work that we do can create some very short-term and immediate impacts to build on the great work that's already being done in the region. But some things are going to take a much longer investment and approach. What we do see, though, in terms of some of those challenges, what we do see is the strengths that are coming through in our community is that despite the fact that some of our services are overwhelmed, they're at their limits, they're at their capacity, and they're burnt out, and they're trying constantly to do the best they can for our community and to improve well-being, they're still showing up. They're still showing up for the work. So we're seeing great engagement from our sector. We're seeing great trust in terms of them sharing information and inviting us into their space to understand what's happening for their clients. And we're also seeing that in terms of Gladstone, I know this is no surprise to any of you, but the great relationships that exist in town. So the collaboration is already there. It's just that everyone's very busy and don't always get a chance to do it in the most effective way. So part of GRT's work is to create that space and to do the legwork to enable those conversations to take place with the least amount of additional workload for some of those community members and stakeholders. Another great strength is the fact that we're part of a national network. So in terms of research and learnings and experiences from other communities, we've got great access to that work. A really important part, though, that we've seen is the courage of government in this work. So this program is different. It's certainly not what I've experienced in sector before, and we've heard from many of our sector providers that this is different to what they've experienced. Government has really put the trust and the opportunity into the hands of our community to do this work, and they've done it in a way that's allowed us to be safe to fail. So they've actually allowed us to take risks and to do things differently. To complement that, we've got an environment here where our commercial stakeholders also have got a skin in the game. They really understand what is required locally, and they're very willing to be at the table and to learn. So that engagement across sector of all stakeholders is, I think, going to be the secret ingredient in the recipe here in Gladstone. A lot of work still to do, but effectively the strengths that we're seeing, hopefully, will be able to outweigh the challenges that we experience. And from here forward, it's really about making sure that we continue to have that voice in the work, to make sure that the initiatives that are put in place through the action plan and the design of those solutions is going to be the most effective that we can create with the knowledge that we have. So thanks so much for bearing with us with that overview. Some of the content I know you've heard before, but I wanted to make sure that anybody new to the information had a bit of an idea. By all means, if there's questions from the content, we'd love to hear them. And of course, our website's now up and running too. So for any community members that might like more information, please do refer them to the website. Thank you.
Thanks, Lorna. Was there any questions to Lorna, Councillor Churchill?
Thanks for that, Chair Khan, Lorna, Orla, Bernadette, congratulations. Some of us have been to those workshops, which sees genuine cross-sector collaboration, which is pleasing to see. But I just wanted to step back in the past. The last time you presented, I had asked the question in relation to taking a whole of region approach, which I see that you mentioned Miriam Vale and Agnes Water. But I just wanted to go back, and I think it was relevant to the schools. You were getting into the schools because they are our future generations, the young ones, which was Raglan, Ambrose, Baffle down in the Baffle area. So I'd love to know just at this stage how we've been able to approach the full footprint of Gladstone region.
Thanks, Councillor Churchill. Yeah, we definitely took on board your question last time, Councillor Churchill, about making sure that we accessed all the region, and just to ensure that the knowledge that we're getting from community members and stakeholders about where we should be going is appropriate. We've actually got a map on our website at the moment of the places that we're currently going to invite people to let us know if there's other places that we should be visiting for some of our engagements. In terms of the schools, we work. The way that we're working currently is that we will normally access a stakeholder who has the network. So for example, in this case, Department of Education, and we'll start there and then we'll start to filter our work out. And that complements the work that we're doing in the community engagement space, which is much more cold call, much more open invitation to anybody who'd like to have a conversation. So the work with schools is predominantly about understanding for those educators what they're seeing in the children that are presenting at school, where the areas are that they see that there could be improvements made, and then factoring that into the design work of the initiatives that we're doing. So one of the things that we heard quite early on is that our educators are often the first responder to a family in need. So a family might present at school, and whether it be about the child that they're presenting with or whether it be about other family complexities, they'll often come and seek the support from a trusted person like the teacher at school. So those educators are taking a lot on their shoulders beyond their scope of having to create great educational opportunities and futures for our children. The support that they require as well from sector and being able to understand where to go for information, who to refer to, and where those key doorways are into then support, collaborative supports is really critical. So We've held one event already for educators specifically, and part of the work that we're doing in that referral pathways group is tailored towards how to create the right resources for educators and how they can access that information when they're running very, very busy days already. And certainly the work, and as I mentioned, those collaborations, the work of GROW, which is the Connect for Children program run by Linda Arnell at the Department of Education, has done some awesome groundwork with all the stakeholders involved in that work. So we're supporting and enabling the work that they're already doing.
I've got a couple other higher level questions, and hopefully they're brief and the answers can be brief. Is that trying to understand, you made recommendations or you're talking about migration variables. We talk about FIFO because we've been a destination for FIFO, BIBO, DIDO, drive in, bus out, whatever the case might be. So my question appropriately would be, how does this interact with our Gladstone Region Economic Development Strategy? And how does it integrate or interrelate, and you made reference to the Economic Development Group recently. And the other part of it is that in going forward, some of the items in the challenges and opportunities come at a cost. So I'd also like to ask who, and I know you're going to say, you've said it in your presentation, it's community owned, but at the end of the day, there are only those that perhaps can contribute financially, and you're talking about 3 tiers of government. Who will actually own this, and what's the life of it? If we referred to our social infrastructure strategic plan that everybody was working towards, but it was really only government and the major corporates that could put the dollars to deliver the outcomes. So my two questions is, how does it interrelate, and who's going to take ownership for the life of this database?
Beautiful, thanks Councillor Churchill. I'll try to remember all of the question elements, but please remind me if I miss any. So the first question in regard to the migration variable. So we're looking not only at migration in terms of that employed movement of people into the region, so again, that skills attraction for specific projects, looking historically again to project the future and to manage and monitor the future around workforce movements in. But not only that, it's also the movement of people that arrived into the region to take up opportunities in the region, like, for example, low rents. So in 2016, we saw a huge movement of people into Gladstone region to take up the opportunity of lower rents to support their cost of living. So we're looking at all of those elements together, working, as you say, with other stakeholders. So there's some work happening at state level at the moment to look at projections of what our future demands will be based on industry growth. So working with Department of State Development and then obviously also with Gary Scanlon through the Economic Development Practitioners Network to make sure that we're aligning the pieces of work where possible. Fairly early stages on that one, Councillor Churchill, but as we go more and more into that skills attraction retention conversation, there's obviously consequences that come with development as well. So it's not just trying to plan growth for the future in a way that accommodates short-term needs, it's also then what are the consequences of that in the longer-term need too. So we've got recent experiences from history that give us some indications, but there's always variables, and COVID's been one too, for example, that's impacted on the take-up of accommodation. So trying to factor those things in together. Hope that answers that first part of your question, Councillor Churchill. Thank you. And then the second part of the question in terms of sustainability. Yep. So you're right, in terms of the work that will come through in the action plan, the way that Stronger Places, Stronger People initiative is designed is that it's to support the backbone team to enable the work. It's not program delivery. So there may be elements, for example, that come out in the initiatives of the action plan that may require further funding. Because GRT won't be a service provider, won't be delivering programs, what we would do is we would support the organisations that might be suitable and might be willing and interested in delivering those. And then we would help provide the data evidence, the background story, the community voice, and support them in that application process to seek the funds that they would need to deliver those programs. Sustainability-wise, we've got 2 years left on the Stronger Places, Stronger People funding at the moment. So the program will finish in June 24. We're working at the moment to look at what the successes of this program are. So not only looking at what are the measurements around wellbeing and how we're improving our wellbeing, but what are the things, if we are doing well, what are the things that are actually contributing to us doing well? so that we can basically map that process and replicate it going forward. So how that looks at this point in time, I can't tell you in terms of what happens past June 2024. But what we'd hope is that if all of us, as Gladstone stakeholders, decided that this piece of work has contributed to the improved wellbeing of our community, that we would jointly, collectively, look at what's the next steps. Is it something that government would be interested in participating ongoing, or is it something that we need to try and resource from another avenue? Thanks, Councillor Churchill.
Thanks, Lorna. Just on the challenges and conundrums, obviously talking about planning for growth factors driven by external forces, for example, rental prices, and you mentioned, you know, it's very hard to plan for that. We've seen 2016, you know, very low rentals, as you mentioned, people coming into the community. Then we saw in 2020 with COVID, all the forecasts were suggesting that the property market would collapse, and the opposite was true. Have you had any discussions around how you might be able to plan or for those unknowns, obviously?
It's a golden question, isn't it? It's the one, and again, under GRT, we're not experts in any particular area of the work that we're doing, but we're about bringing the voices together of the experts and including community that have lived through the experiences of these impacts too. So we haven't progressed very far into that work yet, but the next steps, for example, would be talking to council in terms of, you know, what are we seeing in terms of development approval trends, what is the next releases in terms of stock, conversations that have happened in the past, and we've seen some tracked learnings from those. So the Q Shelter report that was done on the housing initiatives that were implemented during the LNG boom, for example, taking some of those historical learnings and looking at what the next steps are into the future. And also, as I say, using that national network that we've got too about who's doing what and what's working. So we don't have all the answers, but the aim is to try and enable at least the resourcing to collect the answers together.
No, that's very interesting. Thank you. Is there any other questions, councillors? No? Thanks so much, Lorna and the team. It's a pleasure to have you back again. Look forward to another update in 6 months or so. So
thanks so much. And please, at any time, if there's any...
We'll see you around between then.
If any of you'd like an update or if there's anything you'd like to contribute to the work, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you. Cheers.
Sorry, we will need a mover, councillors, for the recommendation. Move Councillor Hanson, seconding Councillor Cameron. All those in favour? Thank you very much. All right, we'll move on to now item number G/4.1, Audit Risk and Improvement Committee minutes, and I'll hand over to Tanya, who's the Manager for Governance. Thanks, Tanya.
Thank you. Council's Audit Risk and Improvement Committee met on the 16th of March for the quarterly ARIC meeting. The minutes from that meeting are now presented to Council in accordance with Section 211(1)(c) of the Local Government Regulations. I'm happy to take any questions, but Councillor Muscat or Councillor O'Grady may also be able to provide some further commentary as Council's committee representatives.
Thanks, Tanya. Any questions? Councillor Hanson?
Just a couple through the chair. Page 11 of 25, I think, in the minutes. Performance plans. I know as a group we've been asking for these for a long time. We're getting down to level 3. Is that the whole of level 3 or level 3 management, I'm saying, in the organisation? Are we into that, finished that group yet, or is it still progressing?
Lisa may be able to provide some.
I'd probably need to take that question on notice, Councillor, since we have had a fair degree of movement in our management team, so just checking the up-to-date figures. We were well on track to completing that, but there has been some disruption, but happy to bring that information back and confirm with you. Yeah,
that'd be good, thank you. And one other question, page 15 of 25, impairment reversal. Could that be explained to us a little bit, or do you need to bring that back to a, you know, because we saw what impairment did to our books and figures last year. If we can get some reversal on that, it'd be great, but could we have some explanation on where that's going to come from? Or is that to come back to it, can come back to us as well?
Councillor Muscat may wish to speak, but it was in relation to the airport, which obviously there was a significant impairment. Obviously COVID conditions have changed in the operating environment, so there's been some conversation about whether there's opportunity for reversal of some or all of that impairment, but Councillor Muscat may wish to speak to that.
No, thanks Lisa, and thanks Councillor Hanson for that too. It is, as our CEO has mentioned, but there's also, in a way, a bigger discussion around asset valuations as well. So where we have been looking at maybe just challenging some of those valuations and how we can go about that. So I know the team's working to understand more of that process and whether we are able to then change some of the evaluations that come. We don't have to always accept them as they come. We can challenge them, and that could be part of some of these impairment reversals as well.
Just in Mark Holmes's absence today, I can take that on notice and get him to speak to that when he presents this month's finance report next meeting.
Yeah, I was aware about the impairment of the airport. I'm just wondering whether that word impairment was about just the airport or our group as well. So that would be good if we can get a good report back on that, because I think auditing teams are a little bit hesitant to reverse impairment. They usually are. So it's going to take a pretty good case for us to have that happen.
My apologies, Councillor Hanson. I was focusing on the airport, but you're entirely correct. There was a significant impact on asset valuation. If the council would like a report, but as councillors are aware, we're commencing in budget workshops with you next week. There has been significant work done on the asset valuations, which is in relation to useful lives, as I think you're probably aware, and we have already clawed back a portion of that impairment value. So that information will be provided to you on the current status next week. But if you would also like a separate report, we could do that as well.
No, not necessary, but we're going to have a good discussion before we commence, and I'm sure that our GMs and the CEO have been through this already, but we're going to have to go through this pretty thoroughly before we commence budget.
Thanks, Councillor Hanson. Councillor Churchill.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. This should be fairly straightforward. It's probably a continuation from where Councillor Hanson's coming from, and it's really a governance question, because when we're talking about the aspects of anticipated operating deficits and recommendations, and then the risk report, which is in the agenda item, but I make reference to our capital works delivery program where there's recommendations that come. So my question is, from a governance perspective, in adopting the minutes of the audit risk minutes and their improvement minutes, does that mean automatically that the recommendations, because I make reference to the committee recommended that post-implementation review should be completed, and I'm well aware that the Queensland Audit Office reports that many of us, if not all of us, have read those ones, the previous ones that have gone to government, is I'm trying to understand when there's recommendations that come from the ARIC committee saying that we should be reviewing post-implementation reviews should be completed upon 3, 6, 9-year reviews to ensure the benefit, and there are other recommendations in there as well. Is that an automatic given once we adopt the minutes, or is that a further decision later on? Coming back to where Councillor Hanson's making references, do we get to decide, discuss, debate and decide further on, or is it an automatic acceptance from the ARIC committee minutes that will be done?
No, your second scenario there is correct. So we've just made some recent governance improvements to how we capture recommendations from ARIC and then provide information on what our response to that is. So it's not an automatic must be implemented. We will actually keep track of how that information's been received, considered and responded to. So that particular item is the subject of a future council forum to get your input into whether you would like to pursue that and how you would like to pursue that. So we will definitely track those recommendations, but no, they're not a given from adopting the minutes.
Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? No? Can I have a mover, please? Moved Councillor Churchill, seconded Councillor Muscat. All those in favour? Declare it carried. We move on to now item number G/4.2, Community Investment Program Destination Events. And we do have General Manager for Community Development and Events, Kylie Lee, who's with us online. Over to you, Kylie.
Thank you, Councillor. Good luck. Thank you, councillors. Good morning. And I'm very pleased to provide this report to you this morning. This report is for the Destination Event Funding Round, and it's an application from the Gladstone Development Corporation to continue to host their annual Cultural Immersion Festival in 1770 during the long weekend in October 2022. As you'll be aware, the Cultural Immersion Festival was introduced in 2020 and Gladstone have successfully delivered it for the last 2 years. The festival is designed to provide opportunity to showcase Aboriginal history, to talk about the encounter with the Cook Voyage, and to celebrate the culture and the contribution and achievements of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders of the region. Council has supported this event since its inception in 2020 and does acknowledge its alignment with our Reconciliation Action Plan and also our Welcoming Cities initiative. The event has previously been supported through an investment of $35,000 and we do acknowledge the desire from the organisers to grow this event and continue to embed it as a destination event for the region and the state. The request in front of us today is a total of $50,000, which is to support higher level entertainment and the attraction of further visitation to the event. The event has been assessed by a panel using the key selection criteria and scoring based on the information provided in the application. The application scored a total of 71%, which demonstrates that the application has met or exceeded all key selection criteria, and the panel may favourably recommend the application. Should Council endorse the panel's recommendation, the destination event budget will be oversubscribed by a total of $9,083. I can acknowledge an error in the report on page 12 stating there's an overspend of $59,000. It should just be $9,000. However, the slight overspend can be absorbed into the overall community investment budget from the remaining $83,595. I invite any questions from councillors.
Thank you, Kylie. Questions, councillors? Councillor O'Grady.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Just a question, Kylie, probably two questions. So we've given them $35,000 in the past. We're looking at adding another $15,000 to that. I was just wondering, have they actually applied through TEQ at all for some funding, so we don't have to bear the brunt of, them being self-sustainable? And that's what we're sort of, with these events, we try and get them to do, like other events we have down at 1770 Agnes Water.
Thanks for the question, Councillor O'Grady. I do believe Gladstone are applying to TEQ. They fully intend to get some further support. Gladstone are very good at attracting funding to the program, and I absolutely agree with you that when events are in the position where council can reduce the levels of investment, where they do become sustainable on their own. So that would be the intent. So the answer to your question is yes, I believe they are applying for TEQ funding.
Councillor Branthwaite.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. My sort of question's just along the same lines as what Councillor O'Grady's was. From what I gather and what I read, it's obviously they're trying to get a higher level of entertainment. Can you sort of clarify that side of things for me?
Sure, Councillor Branthwaite, they are trying to higher grade entertainment attracts a higher cost. So they're trying to get some of those higher name entertainment to attract further visitation. And then there's an additional marketing cost that comes with that as well. So that's where we're seeing the increase in this request.
So, as far as the event's concerned, is there a sustainability built in it, like a cost that they can recover, like as an admission or something like that?
This is a free event for the community, so there isn't a ticket price admission as such. So it is dependent on funding at this stage.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't aware of that, because it's just that our other events, like I know things are pretty tight, extremely tight, especially when we're starting to overspend by $9,000. I know it can be absorbed by other things, but I think we're sort of nearly not austerity side of things, but it's you know, I really the event itself is fantastic. I'm just worried about our fiscal side of things with overspending as such like that, and yeah, if I could just hand it back, just say, look, here's the 35, that would be really cool. But to overspend by $9,000, even if we just get to the stage where we balance the books rather than try and draw enough funds from another sector just to cover it, it doesn't sit right with me. That's all. Thank you.
Councillor Hanson.
This has nothing to do with the funding itself. I think that's fine. I've got no problems with the funding going to Gadajal on this. But I think we have to, as a group, go back to the process of the funding investment for community investment programs and just have a look at it. I think it needs to be tweaked a little bit about the meaning of what do organisations need to keep developing, to keep moving on events in the region. So I'd like to, at some stage, have a look at that, coming back to get some real understanding of, you know, someone puts in an application for 60% and they get the full money. Someone puts in an application with 90%, they get less funding. So I just think that needs to be looked at, and we need to, as a group, have a look at that moving forward. Kylie, I'm happy with this at the moment, but I think we need to have another look at the process. I'm all process, aren't I, Councillor? Yeah.
Councillor Muscat.
Thank you, Councillor Goodluck. I tend to agree as well with Councillor Hanson, and this has gone through an assessment process which we endorsed and approved. So obviously, yeah, we can have all the questions we want, and I sort of agree with sometimes not understanding 100% how we allocate monies, but and this isn't new, but I'm of the opinion that there's a difference between sustainability or making an event sustainable and us making the decision that that's what we want to have in our region. So sometimes events will never be sustainable, or sometimes events will not be as sustainable as we want them to be, but we, as a council and as a community, see value in having them. So while it will be wonderful to have sort of that discussion, sometimes events need to be free because we want to encourage them to, we see the value in the message that they give up to our community. We see how community responds to those events. So it's not always about money, and value is not just in dollar figures. It's also in a number of different things. So it will be wonderful for us to have that discussion about what sustainability means to us. And then we can take into account all of our different opinions and things like that. I mean, I like to see more events, for example, that promote environmental values, and maybe those ones will never be sustainable, but that's what we want to have as a community, if we do. Or it could be other things. It could be about inclusivity, social cohesion, and some of those things we can't make them sustainable, or someone is always going to be paying for for those things. So it's up to us, and I don't mind spending money on things that we want to have that enrich our community.
Thank you, Councillor Muscat. Just quickly, Kylie, before I go to Councillor Cameron, and it may have been touched on, sorry, in the attachments that I did read through, but I didn't see it there, sorry. But the destination event criteria says that it attracts, it's for events that attract over 5,000 participants with 15% of out of region attendance, and it's got participation projections of about 1,800 people in the information there. So this still, and I just note that there are other events, in the next item on the agenda, impact events that have similar or greater numbers of projected participation, but they're not classed as destination events. Can you just clarify that for me, sorry?
I can. I'm not sure. I'm not sure of the actual attendance projection for this particular festival, Councillor Goodluck. I'm not sure how they actually count the participants for this particular event, because it is a free event. So I think it is very much an estimation in that respect. We have considered this as a destination event, as it does match the criteria for a destination event, whereas the others don't. I do note the one that you're talking about in the next report. It doesn't align with the criteria of a destination event. However, the panel agreed that this particular event did meet the majority of the criteria for a destination event.
So it didn't meet the attendance numbers criteria, but it did meet others. Is that what I'm hearing?
Correct.
Other criteria. Okay. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Cameron.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor. Not on. Thank you. Just getting further to Councillor Hanson's comments there. Do we get to see the acquittal result from the funding? Because from that result of the acquittal, we could make assessments as to how successful the program was, whether they met KPIs, whether they got their attendance figures up. That would be a very helpful document to see.
The panel certainly does see the acquittal information, Councillor Cameron, so that's part of the assessment. That's part of the actual checklist prior to the application being assessed by the panel, So the Community Investment Officer actually looks at the acquittal, and if the acquittal is eligible, that's part of the checklist before it goes to a panel assessment. So if there's not a successful acquittal of a program, it's ineligible for funding.
Yeah, look, thanks for that, Kylie, but I was more referring to the councillors themselves that actually make these decisions. Yes. Whether they could see, even as just a proceed result, is to see whether they met their KPIs, which can give us a better background on whether we approve, disapprove, or celebrate one or the other. Thank you.
That's a very good point that Councillor Cameron makes, Mr. Acting Mayor. I agree.
I was actually going to say the same thing, okay?
Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Rick. And I actually get the destination criteria. I think this fits the bill as far as a destination. It's so important for our region, as the stories to be told from that. Mine was purely on an affordability side of things. I still come back to that. We're taking money out of something to justify something else, and if you're in a household, you wouldn't do it. So, but in saying that, there's different criteria here. So, thank you.
Thank you. I think the event is a wonderful event, and it's an important event for the region, and I can understand that we would want to look at it as at a destination event. I personally don't understand when we've got clear criteria around the number of participants, why this couldn't then, it's not clear to me, and it perhaps then might not be clear to others as to how this falls into that category. So I do, but I support the event. I'm happy to support the officer's recommendation, or unless we have an alternate recommendation here today. But I think it highlights to me that we need to have that clearer transparency on how we assess these funding commitments. But is there any other...
The actual categories, you have to, yeah.
Just the clearer categories, and if we've got clear criteria, from what I can see for that destination event, the participants of over 5,000 is one of the main criteria. So, Kylie, did you want to speak to that? Sorry.
Sorry, thanks, Councillor Goodluck. I just had information come to hand that there was 8,556 participants last year, which is why it was destination category.
So is that
that came from their acquittal?
From their acquittal, and not that I'd challenge that in any way, but it's a community of 2,000 approximate people, so that seems like a big estimate. But then that's all right if that's what was in their acquittal. Can we make sure we have those participation numbers? Sorry, in the document.
In the report. Absolutely.
Councillors, did we have someone who wants to move a recommendation? Councillor Hanson.
Move the officer's recommendation.
Move the officer's recommendation. Second to Councillor Cameron. Yep. All those in favour? Thank you, Kylie. We'll move now on to item number G/4.3, Community Investment Program Impact Events. As I have a conflict with one of those events, sorry, do we need a motion to separate the events, Tanya? So I'd like to move that we separate the Under the Trees item and perhaps deal with that first. And then I can come back to deal with the others. Moved Councillor Khan Goodluck, seconding Councillor Chris Trevor. Thank you. Put that motion. All those in favour? Declare it carried. And then before I vacate the chair, do we need to move a motion to appoint a chair?
I'll move that Councillor Trevor chair the meeting in your absence from your declared conflict of interest.
Thank you, Councillor Churchill. Moved, seconding Councillor Branthwaite. Put that motion. All those in favour? Declare that carried. Thank you. Over to you, Councillor Trevor.
Thanks, Acting Mayor. Item G/4.3, Community Investment Program Impact Events. We'll hear from the General Manager, Community Development and Events, and we'll deal with all matters excluding the Boyne-Tennant Arts Business and Community Association, Inc.
It'll be the other way around.
Do the other way around.
Oh, sorry. The other way around. Yes.
And then deal with it.
Thank you, Councillor Trevor. Thank you, councillors. The Impact Event Community Investment Fund received 4 applications. The one that we're dealing with in this section is the Under the Trees Music and Arts Festival. As usual process and under the policy and standard, a panel was constructed and assessed the application through the key selection criteria, receiving ratings as per the information in the application. The committee found this particular application quite favourable, and of note wanted to thank the committee for a well-written and detailed application and acquittal. The panel were fully supportive of the requested investment as assessed against the key selection criteria. The panel also did note that this particular event through a bit of a flex in council's investment over the years. So we have increased our investment traditionally in this event to support it to reach the status that it is now. And therefore, after this particular year's investment, the panel sees that our future investment could be reduced as the event is starting to be self-funding or require lesser funding. So the panel did support this application, and I invite any questions from councillors.
Thanks, Kylie. Anybody have any questions, queries, concerns, issues?
I agree wholeheartedly, Councillor Trevor. This is a great event, but it's still growing, and I'm not sure whether we drop off the funding moving forward, because the event is growing, and it will continue to grow with council support, I believe. And that we're only one of the supporters, but we have to give the organisation that's running this, which is Boyne BTABC, some heart in moving forward to say that council will support them into the future.
Councillor Branthwaite. Thanks, Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, Councillor Rick, totally agree with you. I think it's one of those events that will continue to grow. Totally support the recommendation, and I really wouldn't like to see it diminish, even though the idea is to have sustainability built into our events. This event will grow and grow and grow, and I think our community should be very, very proud of GRC's involvements and also the voluntary side of things, the BTABC, and go in and keep on supporting those sort of groups that are having the success right across our region. It's a pretty cool event.
Thanks, Councillor Branthwaite. Any other commentary? No other commentary. We'll have to amend the officer's recommendation, and the suggested recommendation I make is that Council adopt the Community Investment Panel recommendation of funding for the application received from Boyne Tanham Arts Business and Community Association Inc. under the Community Celebration Fund, Impact Event Funding, and 2, authorise the Chief Executive Officer or Delegate to finalise and execute the funding agreement with Boyne Tanham Arts Business and Community Association Inc., the successful applicant, detailing relevant entitlements and conditions. Do we have a mover for that recommendation? Moved Councillor Branthwaite, seconded Councillor Hanson. All in favour? It's carried. We'll have to get the Acting Mayor back in, please. And I'll hand back over to Acting Mayor, Councillor Khan.
Thank you. So we're on item number G/4.3. Over to you again, Kylie. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor. Good luck. Council has received an additional 3 applications to its Community Investment Fund. So these events are impact events. One is the Rainbow on the Reef Pride Festival, the Tanham Boyne Junior Rugby League Crab Classic Shield, and GAPDL's Australian National Busking Championships. As per our usual process, the panel was constructed to assess the applications and ranking each against a set of key selection criteria that you can see in the report. A new event was assessed, the Rainbow on the Reef Pride Festival of 2022, which is a 3-day celebration that cultivates the culture of pride in identity and diversity of the LGBTQIA+ community in the Gladstone region. When assessing this application, the panel noted the quality of the application and the research undertaken to design the festival, and felt that this event fills a gap in the community and contributes to Council's inclusivity goals for connected communities. Excuse me. Acknowledging that this is a new event, the panel decided to fund the event at $15,000 as per the Rainbow on the Reef sponsorship prospectus. Would councillors prefer me to pause at each of these applications or progress through the panel's recommendations for the remaining 3 and then invite questions?
I think if you want to talk to the whole remaining 3, yep. Thanks, Kylie, and we'll invite questions after that.
Thanks, Councillor. Good luck. The second application was the Boyne Junior Rugby League Crab Classic Carnival. Again, the panel recommended $15,000 funding for this 3-day carnival, which hosts teams from all over Queensland. And this year, the carnival's tagline is "All Legends and No Bullies." In addition to the football carnival, the event has a strong focus on mental health awareness and education for young people and their families, with the intention to provide referral pathways and avenues for youth to seek help before it's too late. The panel noted that these type of carnivals contribute greatly to the local economy through accommodation and engagement of local business. And the panel further noted that there's a strong alignment with Council's existing mental health program for 2022 and that there are strong links to collaborate. The third application assessed by the panel was GAPDL's Australian National Busking Championships in Gladstone. This is the second time that GAPDL have held this event. The event involves engaging local musicians and providing really great opportunities for emerging artists to play in front of larger crowds, and also activating our CBD and East Shores area. The panel noted that there was quite an increase in investment requested for this event, with the last event request for $2,500. However, they were fully supportive of the event continuing to take place in Gladstone. In line with the decision to partly fund the Rainbow on the Reef Pride Festival, the panel referred back to GAPDL's sponsorship prospectus and aligned the investment with the open category sponsor of $5,000, which is double the investment from last year. Should Council be supportive of the recommendations by the panel, the impact event sponsorships proposed to be funded would be a total of $59,000. There's currently a remaining budget of the impact event line item of $22,200. There is capacity in the overall community investment program budget to be able to cover that funding with the remaining funds of $85,000. I invite any questions from councillors.
Thanks, Kylie. Questions? Councillor Branthwaite.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Kylie, just referring to the likes of the GAPDL busking championships, and I realise that it's double what was asked for last year, but their application was for $25,000, was it not? So is the $5,000 going to be able to do what they actually wanted to do?
I believe so, Councillor Branthwaite. They held the event last year as well with a reduced funding from Council and still held the event. The panel did believe that through our continued investment, it could definitely continue to take place.
What was the driving force behind the elevated amount they were asking for?
I believe there was an increase in outside entertainment to supplement the end of the busking event.
All right. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for that.
That's okay.
Councillor O'Grady.
Sorry, I had exactly the same question actually. Yeah, no, that's okay, not a problem at all. Yeah, it does concern me. You know, they're an event, and I know they were impacted last year by COVID as well. So, you know, I think $5,000 wouldn't be enough really to help them out if they wanted to grow their event. So this is what we were talking about before, you know, and you look at the other events, we're going to give them what they've asked for. So here's an event already showed that, you know, some people have turned up to it, and then, you know, they've got $20,000 less than what they've asked for, and the other events they've got the same. And, you know, I know every event is a new event, like when they start off, but, you know, I think they were impacted severely by COVID last year, and I think we should give them a little bit more money than $5,000.
Thanks, Councillor Grady. I just struggle to see. I think we need to refine the process or the policy, or perhaps the reporting a little more. We've got, you know, the Rainbow on the Reef, which is a 76% panel score, which has received 15,000 of the 20,000 requested. the Crab Classic Shield, which is a 64% panel score, but has received the total amount of funding requested. And then again, I understand you mentioned the prospectus. I don't think we got the prospectus information unless it was in the attachment things, but again, with GAPDL, there was a 61% score, but only received the 5,000. So perhaps maybe it's the way we're articulating the decision making, or it needs a little bit of refinement. But was there any other questions, councillors? Councillor Muscat, did you have
Sorry, Councillor Goodluck. I can also advise that some of the budget items in GAPDL's request were ineligible for funding, which is why we have gone back to their prospectus.
I did
Yeah,
read
that was mentioned in the confidential report.
Yes, it was, yeah. But is that, are we to assume that that was $20,000 ineligible for the funding, or, because I don't recall seeing that level of information?
I'd have to take that on notice, Councillor Goodluck. Sorry, $15,000 was ineligible items relating to prizes or, sorry, I'm just trying to get this for you, prizes or licensing fees.
Okay. And
So $15,000 was ineligible, yep.
So that's all right. So we're 10,000 out, 5,000, sorry. Did you have a question, Councillor Muscat, or?
Yeah, just a quick one, and it was probably just a clarification on the Rainbow on the Reef, because that was kind of also what I was thinking. It's an event that is 76% scoring, but yet it's not getting the full amount. So I understand the prospectus, but that is, I wouldn't think they would have written an application. We're supposed to assess the application on the application's merits, not necessarily a prospectus. But if you, do you mind, was there any ineligible items in the list, or?
Not at all. There was no ineligible items in this particular application. This was, this is a brand new organisation with a brand new event. So the panel's recommendation was to invest at $15,000, which is still at the highest level in their prospectus, acknowledging that it is a first-time event for the region.
Is there the in-kind support that they requested hasn't been recommended? Is that correct?
That's correct.
I understand that that's, well, it's the second time they do it, but I guess it's, if we are assessing something and it's giving us a 76%, it's the highest score in the list. So is there an assessment question that asks how long this event's been around, and obviously hasn't taken as many points as, I'm struggling to understand why the highest scoring event is not getting the full amount, and why we come up with 15 and not 12, or not, I don't know, not 17. So if that makes sense.
No, it's a good question, Councillor Muscat, and I do appreciate it. It was really just that there was no evidence of prior delivery.
Okay.
So it was basically we've invested the cash amount that they've requested to help support the delivery of the event. They wanted audio equipment from GECC, which was the additional 5,000. We're investing the total cash amount.
Yep.
That would provide them opportunity to still engage stage and audio, not necessarily through GECC, but we didn't feel that it would impact the delivery of the event.
Okay, thank you.
I think we need to tie the amount of funding to perhaps the rating matrix, or work out a way that we can clearly articulate, if you score a red score of 50% or less, you know, you might not be eligible. The orange score between 51 and 65%, you'll be eligible for 75% funding. Green score of over 65.5%, you'll be eligible for 90+% funding. There needs to be a way that we can clearly articulate to community groups and organisations that are applying for funding how their application is going to translate into the level of funding that they'll get. That's just what what I think councillors aren't sort of getting here, and I take Councillor Muscat's point. You know, how did we arrive at 15,000 and why wasn't it 12,000 or 17,000? So there just needs to be that transparency, I think, in the way that we deal with these funding grants. I know this is, I think, only the second round under the new policy, and I think it is a good policy, but just needs a little bit more refinement from my point of view. Councillor Grady, do you have a question?
I'd like to move the motion with an amendment to give GAPDL $10,000.
I'd like to move that. As are you happy with the other funding?
Yes, I'm happy with the other funding, and I just for GAPDL, I'd like to give them $10,000 instead of $5,000. Kylie did say there was extra money in. There is money in that 22 grand, yeah, in that bucket of money that we could utilise.
Okay, and
could I please add that money is used for eligible items?
Eligible? Oh yes, yeah.
Yeah,
correct.
because not for. I mean, I know at the end of the day they're gonna, you know, they can work out whatever it is, but I just don't. I think it's appropriate that we don't support
yes.
Not eligible items.
Yes.
So,
but that was $10,000 was the balance with that. Yeah, there was $5,000. Yeah, so $5,000 was the difference. Yes.
so can we, before I know we've got a seconder in Councillor Churchill. Kylie, can you just confirm that that was the case, that there was 10,000 in total that was eligible for funding under the application?
Correct, Councillor. Good luck.
Okay, so you're happy to move that amendment that Councillor Muscat made around eligible items?
Yes.
And we're moving the motion in its entirety with the other two applications as well. Yep. Lisa.
Sorry, Mr Chair, if I may, that dot point 2 of the recommendation covers off on the funding agreement, which has the conditions which would relate to eligible items. If councillors would also like a separate item, absolutely understand, but just that we'll make sure we make that clear to the applicant. Thank you.
All right, so we've got a mover for that in Councillor O'Grady and seconded in Councillor Churchill. Is there any further questions or comments, councillors? Everyone's good. We'll put the motion. All those in favour? Declare it carried. Thank you, Kylie. We'll move on now to item number G/4.4, parking amendments, subordinate local law number 1, 2022, and hand back over to the manager for governance, Tanya. And Vicky.
Thank you. Council's governance team has undertaken a scheduled review of Council's local laws and subordinate local laws relating to parking. As part of the review, the governance team considered feedback from the state government, Council's Traffic Environment Advisory Committee, amendments to legislation and feedback from internal stakeholders. The proposed amendments are now presented for the councillors' consideration. If council is to adopt the officer's recommendation, officers will undertake consultation with the public and state agencies, after which the matter will be brought back for council's further consideration. I have with me today Vicky Hankinson, who undertook this piece, and she'll be able to provide some detailed responses to councillors.
Thanks, Tanya. Any questions to officers, councillors?
Yeah, it's straightforward, but the one at the Clinton school is just for the drop-off, stop, drop and go area?
It's actually for the Marley Brown Oval car park
It's
area.
for the whole of the car park?
Yes,
And
yeah.
it will be
Yeah,
proposed to be regulated?
Principally so that we can cover off on monitoring that disabled parking associated with that car parking facility, basically, yeah.
No, thank you for confirming that.
Any other questions, councillors? No? Do we have a mover? Oh, Councillor Braithwaite, sorry.
Yeah, sorry there, Councillor Khan. I just wanted to clarify, just pull up this. How much is the penalty unit?
Penalty unit is $137.85, I think, currently.
That's
I'll
okay.
just double check that for you.
Okay, it's just that makes referral to that. Obviously, it goes up and down in scales, but
Yeah. Currently $137.85, and that's set by the state government.
So, yeah. So, okay. So by doing this, we're actually defined. It's not just a double. I notice there's a thing in here that's saying it's just not double parking anymore. It's actually, yeah, if you know what I mean. It's actually probably a bit more easily defined. Is that for local?
Yeah, that's right. We have where we wrap offences up into the general provisions. The person receiving the ticket doesn't get a good idea of the actual offence that's occurred. So
Right.
we're just adding some additional codes so that if I double park, I understand my offence is double parking rather than a general Part 12 offence. Yeah.
Yeah. I gather it was more clarifying exactly what the infringement was for. So, as far as I know from this will probably go through today, but as far as the communication with the public side of things, how's that going to happen?
We are required legislatively to advertise the proposed changes for a minimum of 21 days. So we will actually place the public notices, but we'll also undertake some consultation with our community engagement team.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, councillors? Do I have a mover? Moved Councillor Braithwaite, seconding Councillor Cameron. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, declare it carried. We move on now to item number G/4.5, Regional Arts Development Fund, Round 1, 2021-2022. Councillor Muscat has a conflict. I have a conflict. I'll leave the room. Do we need to reappoint another chair or just...
Yeah, before you go any further, also, Chair Khan, is that I've got a conflict, and I had respectfully requested earlier that because I'm the chair of RADIF, that I would like to seek a separation of two projects that perhaps could be dealt with, and then I could come back in again for the remainder of the presentation, which I'd like to ask or move that the Miriamvale State School 125-year celebration and the Calliope River Village Festival submissions be separated from the rest of the assessments.
So we've got that mover in Councillor Churchill, seconding Councillor Braithwaite. All those in favour? That's carried. So we'll move those items out. Can I get a mover for someone to chair the meeting in my absence, please?
Move Councillor Trevor, take that.
Move Councillor Rick Hanson that Councillor Trevor chairs the meeting, seconding Councillor O'Grady. Put that motion. That's carried. So if we deal with the the two that Councillor Churchill wanted, and then we'll invite Councillor Churchill back in for the rest of it. Over to you, Councillor Trevor.
Thanks, Acting Mayor Khan. So we're dealing with all matters.
Artie?
Councillor Trevor, if I may assist, I believe the intent was to deal with just the Miriamvale State School and Calliope River Village Festival items first, and then Councillor Glenn could return.
Okay. I just didn't have a pen while I was speaking.
No problem. It's been hard to keep up.
Calliope River one.
And Miriamvale State School.
Miriamvale that we're dealing with now.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So item G/4, thanks Leslie. Item G/4.5, Regional Arts Development Fund, Round 1, 21-22. Items Miriamvale State School, 125 years on, and Calliope River Village Festival.
Good morning,
Did we get them
councillors.
right? Right.
Yes. Good morning, councillors and community. Kylie Lee is also online, and Di Paddock, our Cultural Project Specialist, will be joining us online as well. I'm pleased to present this report of Round 1 Regional Arts Development Fund's recommendations for adoption. I will take the report as read, but just a couple of key pieces of information. 12 of 13 applications have been recommended for funding this time, and 11 outcome reports were received that we can discuss next. So at the moment, the two that we're looking at is the Miriam Vale State School and the Calliope River Village Festival, both which were recommended for funding by the committee. I invite any questions.
No questions from the quorum present?
Happy to move. Happy to move the officer's recommendation.
Do we have enough numbers for a seconder? Moved Councillor Hanson, seconded Councillor Branthwaite. The recommendation will be that Council accept the recommendations of its RADF committee and approve funding for the following applications for round 1, 21-22, Miriam Vale State School, 125 years on, and Jack Viljoen, Calliope River Village Festival. CEO, do we need an item 2 authorising you to delegate to you to finalise and execute those funding agreements?
Councillor Trevor, we could probably do that as part of the second resolution that we pass.
Right, okay. So we just need the one that I mentioned, and it's moved Councillor Rick, seconded Councillor Branthwaite. Yes, all in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Could we have the acting? No. Could we have Councillor Churchill back, please?
May I ask another question after this regarding the minutes of the meeting too as well before we decide?
Absolutely, Councillor Hanson. Welcome back, Councillor Churchill.
Oh, it's been a pleasure.
And we're now dealing with all items in item G/4.5, other than the Miriam Vale State School and Jack Viljoen, which a decision has already been made on. Councillor Churchill.
Thank you. So as mentioned, the Regional Arts Development Fund Committee have recommended 12 of 13 applications received this time. 11 outcome reports were also received for your review. The remaining 10 applications have all been recommended for funding as outlined in the report, and happy to take any questions.
Any questions, including that of Councillor Hanson's? Sorry, the one that you wanted to raise after we made the decision on the...
Going back to the minutes, getting them up again, sorry. Sorry, Councillor Trevor.
As long as it doesn't impact on
it doesn't.
Councillor Churchill.
It doesn't.
Being
I just
back
wanted
in
to...
the room, that's all.
No, it doesn't. I just wanted to understand the Treasurer's report, the overall position. Is that of that figure there, is that of the funding amount for the RADF completely, or is there extra money in there, or?
No. So there was a sum of money that was carried over from the previous year. So yes, we do have a little bit more this year.
Confirming that. Thank you.
No other questions? There being no further questions, we will need a mover for the officer's recommendation for the remaining 10 applicants.
Mr Chair, I'd like to move the recommendations, but if I could also make a comment and draw your attention, and I thought that's where Councillor Hanson may have been going in relation to the funding, but I just draw your attention that we've actually made our annual bid to Arts Queensland again, and we're waiting the details of the process review. But the question that keeps getting posed to me from the arts fraternity is how can we continue to raise the level of funding in relation to our annual bid to Arts Queensland, which I believe was increased probably 3-4 years ago, and it relates to the population of our region. So the point I make here at this particular stage is that it would be lovely to be able to increase the funding pot that we could deliver to our arts fraternity, but the challenge is that we're limited, and I believe that we are at close level to the max of the category that we're currently in. So if we could put a call out that we could get one, you know, if we could start increasing our population a little bit, which would allow us to go to the next level in the budget allocation. So, you know, a bit like something of the past, you know, if you're going to have any children, one for our region as well. So, and that will help our arts fraternity, because there is a growing element within the arts fraternity at this stage that is starting to take a real strategic approach in relation to public art. So that's probably a discussion and or a debate that might find its way into our budget process looming, because and rather than preempting what the debate and the discussion will be, is that a number of local government areas are in actual fact now starting to think about a strategic public arts policy or a strategic approach to what the priorities will be for the entire region, and not just Gladstone City, Calliope, Boyne, Tanham. So, so I just say today in that comment that that's advance notice that discussion and debate will probably become involved, I would imagine, through our General Manager in the budget cycle. So thank you for that.
May I, through the Acting Chair?
Thanks, Councillor Glenn.
Just remind everybody too that a population increase will increase our chances of getting a better health service here in town as well. So it's not only with the arts, it's with, importantly, with health.
I don't disagree with you, Councillor Hanson. I was only raising it today as the Chair of Regional Arts Development, but I believe that there will be a lot of other benefits.
Well, we'll need a bigger hospital to deliver the babies, Councillor Hanson.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there you go. One for the arts, one for economic, and one for the region.
Righto. Thanks, team. Thanks, Councillor Glenn. And you've moved the recommendation in relation to the remaining 10 applicants. And I think we now put the CEO, the second one in, authorise the Chief Executive Officer or delegate to finalise and execute funding agreements with the with the successful applicants, detailing relevant entitlements and conditions.
I don't believe that was included as a recommendation of this report, but is it required? No.
What we need to include here is noting the acceptance of the outcome reports.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yes, so that's recommendation 2. Are you happy with that, Councillor Glenn? Yeah. Do we have a seconder for that?
I do have another question.
Yes. Yep. Desley, do we have a seconder for that?
I will second that as well.
Yep. Seconded, Councillor Desley, and a question, Councillor Desley.
Yeah, thank you. I was just wondering, this funding is open up to Gladstone Regional Council only, residents only? Because, you know, looking at the people that we are funding, there is one there that I am concerned about. They are not a resident of Gladstone Regional Council.
Yeah, so their project does need to occur in the Gladstone Regional Council area and using local artists where possible, etc. So the committee does take that into consideration when they're looking at it.
So when that's acquitted, that's actually checked up on?
Absolutely,
yeah,
yes.
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
And to go one step further on that, it's absolutely crucial that they ensure that there is active participation by residents of the Gladstone region as well. So, and we do condition that.
Yeah, thank you. It is just a bit of a grey area, that's all. Thank you.
Everyone happy? Moved. It's been moved by Councillor Glenn, seconded by Councillor Desley. All in favour? It's Carried unanimously. Thank you for that. And we'll need the acting mayor back in, please. And I'll hand back over to acting Mayor Calm.
Thank you. All right. So we're on to item number G/5, councillor reports. I know we've got a few. I'll go to Councillor Hanson.
I was going to just give a brief report on the hookup on the weekend, but you've given a reasonable report to start with. Just to add to that, the crowd numbers at every evening draw were up, and we're not taking that, the group is not taking that from a guesstimation. They're asking people who've attended the function or the event for many, many years, and they all agree that they were up in big numbers. Congratulations to the hookup team, Andrew, Karen and their team, for what they put in on the weekend. There are 27 community groups that benefit from this event as well, and of course the businesses as well that have hopefully benefited on the weekend, and I'm sure there were a lot that were. But congratulations to the hookup team and all of the volunteers, many, many volunteers that kept the park looking nice and kept the event moving. And we hope to hear when the figures come in from the hookup team. We hope to have, as we've said before, some notification of that event and get the figures in for that, for when it's, what's the word I'm trying to find? Acquitted. Thank you, CEO.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Probably not last week before, it was actually Earth Week, and I participated in the Tangaroa Blue clean up on Facing Island as a councillor, and also that was on the Wednesday, and then there was another clean up on Curtis Island, a beach clean up on the Saturday. On the Wednesday, we actually had 22 people helping us out, and we got 41 bags of debris weighing 458 kilos. So that went very, very well. And it was really nice to see such a collaboration between CQU, Maritime Safety, the council, and a whole heap of other groups. And then over on Curtis Island, we saw the LNG companies participate in a pretty big way. We ended up with about 40 odd people over on Curtis Island. The funding that council provided actually paid for all those people and vehicles to get across the island, instead of putting their hand up and asking Curtis Ferry Services for freebies all the time. And it was actually very, very good to see such great participation. The likes of the debris picked up was obviously hard plastic. We're picking up stuff right down to bottle top lids and possibly even smaller. And some of the little creeks and outlets, there's a lot of microplastic. You'd think it was actually in Midden, the way it was layered out, the amount of microplastic that was coming ashore. Plastic drink bottles, bleach and cleaner bottles, rope and scraps, foam, personal care and pharmaceutical packaging. There was a range of stuff. Even fins and whatnot from snorkelers that have lost them overboard. But there was a lot of things that, when they broke it all down on Curtis Island, we actually went on Front Beach and also up to Joey Lee's and the beaches surrounding that area that we could get to at the low tide. And there was 230 kilos, so it wasn't quite as much as what was on Facing Island, but nevertheless there was still a lot of debris caught and correlated and collected. So I'd like to take my hats off to the likes of the Tangaroa Blue, Ian Anderson, and who coordinated it all. He does a wonderful job, and all those people that really put their hands up to walk the beaches. it was so nice to see, and also I think there's a culture now that right across our whole neighbourhood that we're actually starting to look after our backyard. We're starting to pick up those pieces of rubbish. We're not leaving behind stuff that we're not tending to, that we've actually taken there, because all this stuff was actually foreign. It had different languages and different packaging and that on it. So it was really good to see. And one thing good about it, I don't think there was any cigarette butts picked up. Wow. So the whole community's changing, and it's really nice to see that even those that visit these islands and utilise them are still doing their bit as well. So hats off to all them, and thank you so much for obviously the Gladstone Regional Council for facilitating this the transport over and back. It was really pretty cool.
Didn't find any thongs at all.
We did, yeah. It's quite funny. You could walk past this thing and on the way back to the car, and thinking, how did I miss that thong? You know, just the light falls on in a different way. Yeah, there was always one. Yeah. There was a fin there too, like a snorkel fin. Yeah, anyhow, and a mudguard off a truck. How did that get there?
Thanks,
Anyway.
Councillor Braithwaite. Councillor O'Grady.
Yeah, thank you, Acting Mayor Khan. Now, I had the pleasure of attending the Soldier Settlement Centenary at the Boyne Valley at Yabobo. It was just absolutely amazing. Hats off goes to Kathy McLaughlin, that's done the research over years and years and years. Absolutely amazing. There was folders and folders of families, which are soldier settlements that she had collated. I believe they are going to be in the museum out there. So if anybody could get a chance, go out and have a look. But on the day too, they actually opened, on Sunday, they opened the time capsule. So there's something from the Gladstone Regional Council. So it's been 9 years since it's been open.
Yes, I saw that go in.
Oh, did you?
To the time capsule, yes.
Yeah, so I'd like
I was at that event.
Yeah, so it was the Bush Festival. So I'd like to present that to Councillor Khan. And I'd like to recommend that in the next month they'll be putting it down again. Can we please put something in it to go down? They're thinking maybe in 2100. So whether we can put something to pull it up again, so which we won't be around. But if we can put something in that. Race notice. So if we can make contact with
not next year.
with the Memorial Hall and at Yabobo, and so we can have some addition and maybe put those papers back in. So, Councillor Khan, would you like to just say what you've got in that little parcel?
Thank you, Councillor O'Grady. That's very interesting. We've got a media release from June 4th, 2013, the Journey Through History at Yabobo Bush Festival booklet launch. We've got a copy of the Gladstone Regional Council 2013 to 2017 corporate plan, which you probably remember well, Councillor Hanson, and a Councillor Connect from July 2013 as well. And I think in the media release it said that the festival was opened by member for Gladstone, Liz Cunningham, at the time. So I'm sure we'll be able to touch base with them and put something else in the next time capsule. I think they were saying it was going to be 20 or 25 years for the next one. So was that right?
No, they have actually. There's some others actually buried already. So it's 2036, I think.
Oh, yeah.
And 2088, and they're looking at 2100.
Bit of history. And I was up there for Anzac Day with Councillor O'Grady as well, and got to look at some of the fantastic work from Kathy McLaughlin, and it was a really great turnout. So if you're looking to see some pretty special history about the Boyne Valley, make sure you stop in there and say good day. Was there any other councillor reports? Councillor Churchill?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Khan. Can I make a suggestion that in what Councillor O'Grady's recommending, that we actually put something in there for our Saiki sister city relationship, which just celebrated 25 years. So I think it would be extremely relevant and perhaps historic when that gets opened up later on.
I think that's a great idea. Actually, I'll just give one example. A lady, she didn't remember, or whether somebody else, she was accusing somebody of pinching one of her little paintings she had on a wall. It was only very small. And anyway, so she said when they pulled it out, they said, oh, they read out the lady's name, and she said, oh, I didn't put anything in. She goes, oh my gosh, and everybody started laughing. She said because she kept accusing people that stole it. And I'm sure some other people thought they were going to not be on planet Earth when it was reopened too, because they said no, just put it back in, please. It was very interesting.
I've just got a brief one, Councillor Khan. On Saturday, I went back from the hook up to Marley Brown Oval to officially do the official welcome and launch the 47th Battalion Carnival here in Gladstone, in the Gladstone region. And in essence, just to make you aware that this competition's now grown where Gladstone City, albeit Gladstone region, has now hosted it for the third time. And it's now become a long-lasting tribute to the 47th Battalion, and it's actually establishing its own place in history. You know, it couldn't be more synonymous, I suppose, a week after Anzac Day. But the other part of it was, and I'd just like to put on public record, acknowledge that Amanda Ingham, who is local here, Gladstone and Callide, putting it all together and bringing it all together, and the economic, the social and the sporting benefits that had been derived as a result of that. And the 2 points that really jumped out, and this is the feedback that I got from Danny Maguire, who is the Queensland Rugby League Director. He's on the board and he's a central board member, and the central regional manager, Rob Crow, was that the facility out there is impeccable. It's absolutely marvellous and it meets all their requirements and needs, and they certainly want to continue to ensure that the 47th Battalion Carnival, men and women competing in the sport, and their supporters and their families, that they would like to continue as part of that history to come to the Gladstone region in the future. And obviously as part of that, they have a genuine and keen interest to know whatever the future development may be of that particular sporting precinct. But the economic contribution and the feedback that I got from them was that they were just super impressed with the way our local businesses and our local services and accommodation providers with their customer service. So that was exemplary to hear that. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Churchill. Councillor Muscat.
Thank you, Councillor Goodluck. I just wanted to wish a very happy Mother's Day for all mothers in our region for this weekend. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Muscat. We'll move on now to, we've got no urgent business items, no notice of motion and no confidential items. Just like to say thank you to John and Darren who joined us in the gallery, and a reminder to everyone that we do have open galleries, and if anyone does want to come in and sit in and catch up with the councillors, you're always welcome to do so on our general meeting days. Thanks to those joining us online. We'll declare the meeting closed at 2 minutes past 11. Thank you.